Hey, this is Mike Casu, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week, I'm back with my good friend, Justin Sua. Justin is the sports psychologist of the Boston Red Sox and the Cleveland Browns. If you haven't listened to our first show, please do yourself a favor and go listen to that. On this show, we go into tactical ways you can improve your self-awareness, your mindset, and what you can learn from some of the elite athletes that Justin works with. As you'll hear me say in the show, there were some absolute knowledge atom bombs on this episode. Enjoy this show. I'm back with my man, Justin Sua. Justin, you're one of the busiest guys I know, and I really appreciate you making some time to do this show with me.
Oh man, appreciate it, Mike. Any opportunity I have to jump on a call or jump on a podcast with you, I'm jumping at it.
Well, I'm fired up, dude. One of our first conversation was not only one of the most downloaded podcasts that I've ever done, but it was one that resonated with me so much because it's what you do is something that I'm so passionate about. You teach people the inner workings of their mind and how to make the best use of it. Before we get into it, give us a little update. You recently joined the Browns, well, within the past year or so. How are you juggling all of this? You work with two professional teams. You do your own speaking engagements. You have a family that is incredibly valuable to you and important to you. How do you juggle all of this?
You know what? It really comes down to practicing what I preach. And one of the things I've learned from elite athletes is they are dedicated to their craft and they weed out anything that does not lead to success. Any kind of fluff, any kind of gray. And that's what I've had to learn to do. Actually, having these two organizations and being with my family, that has become the purpose, my daily purpose. And so now I don't watch TV. I don't go and do these, I don't get lost on my cell phone. I don't get lost in doing things that don't lead to what I define as success, which is helping people become their best. And it's actually helped me become a little bit more focused, a little bit more dedicated to my craft. And I actually spending more time with my family because I have scheduled around these things that matter most to me. So it's really been a neat opportunity for me to kind of learn how to juggle all these things. But it is easier said than done.
What do you think comes first for you? The teaching that kind of thing to the athletes, or doing it yourself, or are they kind of intertwined?
I believe they're intertwined. However, I truly believe whenever I have the chance to speak with young practitioners in my field, they always ask me, what's a piece of advice you have for me? And what I say is, you need to make sure that your life or what you teach is in harmony with what you do. Mm-hmm. You've got number one, you've got to make sure that, because elite athletes and anyone really, they can sniff out a fake. Mm-hmm. It's easy to go out there and tell people what to do, but they can tell if you're doing it or not. And people will really resonate with who you are rather than if you read it out of a book and then go and try to just download it onto them, or just kind of just regurgitate information that you heard on a podcast. And it's got to be authentic to you. And another thing that I share with them is that your level of expertise needs to match the level of expertise of those you're working with. And so if I'm working with high level athletes, I need to sharpen my craft so that I am a high level performer in what I do, because that's what they're doing. They expect nothing but the best. And so it's really held me to the fire and really made me check myself every day to make sure that I'm honing my craft and sharpening my saw to be the best version of myself I can be in order to help them.
Right. Love it, man. Okay, so last time we talked, we kind of started out with how you start out with your athletes. And what you told me is that you helped them first. You try to understand them and help them understand themselves better. And so I want to kind of dive into that a little bit more on this show at the beginning. So a few weeks ago, I reached out and you kind of helped me prepare for a talk on self-awareness. And I brought up this model called Johari's Window. And for the listeners, we're gonna link this in the show notes so you can see what I'm talking about here. But it's basically it's a model with 4 quadrants. There's the open area. And these are the things that I know about me and that you know about me. There's the blind area that you know about me, but I don't know about me yet. There's the hidden area that I know about me, but I'm not willing to share with you yet. And then there's the unknown area that neither of us know about. And so my understanding is that as a human being, not necessarily as an athlete, but definitely as a human being, you want to increase the size of that open area in all directions. And so first off, I want to clear that part up. The difference between being a human and then being the best athlete you can be. Do you think it's important for athletes to be vulnerable and to share themselves with others? And if so, under what circumstances?
I think that's a great question. I love this Johari Window concept because it is so easy to understand and easily digestible, and to really apply it. To answer your question, short answer is yes. I believe that the more vulnerable you are, and that's a very tricky word for some people. I think some people, they hear the word vulnerable and they hear weak. They hear, oh man, I gotta be sappy and cry and share my emotions. And the reality is, basically what vulnerability and openness does, it provides you an opportunity, that the person who is more vulnerable, to become better at what you do. And the reason that is, it's because you're able to, when you are able to emotionally share your thoughts, your fears, your worries, your doubts, what you end up doing is you're able to go deep inside yourself, and you're able to look at those things from, instead of judging yourself, you're going to be able to make the necessary changes and adjustments to be able to help you get out of your own way. Because what happens a lot of times is we're all carrying around this baggage. We're all carrying around this mental or emotional weight. And the more you open up, the more you realize that, hey, I may be a mess, but I love myself. I can still be successful despite these insecurities, despite these doubts I may have. And in addition to that, you'll end up realizing that everyone has these weaknesses. Right. Everyone has these doubts. And under what circumstances, this is something that's really interesting with the athletes I work with. Here we have these multi-million-dollar athletes, some of the best at what they do. And when they're able to share and look at each other and say, wow, that's what you're afraid of, that's what I'm afraid of too. That's what you are worried about, that's what I worry about too. And the more they're able to share and to check their ego at the door, the more unified they feel with each other, and the more willing they're able to fight for each other, because they understand that, hey, we're all in this together. We're all human. And hey, this is something that we can all get better at together. So yes, I believe that this is something that is very important.
So yeah, you touched on two things. One, vulnerability being kind of a cornerstone of building trust, right, with team athletes. And then even on the individual level, once we share our insecurities, our fears, our self-doubts, they kind of start to lose their power and control over us, right? Absolutely.
One of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves is no one else is going through what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. No one else is experiencing the level of insecurities or doubt that I am. And once you are able to open up, and once you're able to share your vulnerabilities or share your worries, your doubts, insecurities, whatever it may be, once you do that, once it leaves your mind and you put it out on the table, particularly in front of someone who you trust, and then to see that it not only it doesn't taint your relationship with them, but it strengthens it. And you end up realizing, whoa, I was able to share, and hey, I'm still alive. I'm still okay. And then when you have these feelings and these thoughts, when they start to bubble up and to pop up, you're able to look at it and say, you know what? I'm human. That's okay to have these feelings. I'm not the only one who has these feelings. And just what you said, they end up losing power over you. And you'll end up realizing that you don't become attached to this mental baggage or these negative thoughts you may have. And they're just thoughts that come and go, kind of like a storm. They're going to flow through you without you being attached to them and having to get knocked around and beat up by them. And so that's what happens when you are vulnerable and you share it with other people.
Right. So what we're talking about is called self-disclosure. And in the model, that's increasing or decreasing the size of the hidden area. Let's talk about the blind area. These are the things that are unknown by me, but that you know about me. And the way that I learn about them is simply by asking or making it safe for you to give me feedback. So first off, how important is it for an athlete and or a human being in general to seek out and to make it safe for others to give them constructive feedback?
This is one of the foundational pillars of the growth mindset, which we discussed the last time. And for those who are not familiar with the growth mindset, just really quick, there are growth mindset based on something called implicit theories. Dr. Carol Dweck out of Stanford is the one who really founded this body of research, is the one who really spearheaded this. And there are 5 basic fundamental pillars to whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And the overall umbrella of the growth mindset is that this belief that you can change. Your talent isn't static. Your intelligence isn't static. You can improve. And the fixed mindset, the general premise of that is, I can't change. I am who I am. My intelligence, my fitness level, this is who I am at all times. I can't change it. Now, the 5 pillars are how they respond to failure, how they respond to obstacles, their view on effort level, their view on success of others, and last but not least is one which is powerful, how they respond to critical feedback. And if you want to improve, strengthening your relationship with your ability to receive critical feedback is paramount if you want to cultivate this growth mindset and make these necessary changes in order to not just improve as an athlete, but to improve as a human being.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the ways that people block themselves off from receiving feedback?
I think first and foremost, it comes down to relationships. Building a relationship so strong it can bear the weight of truth. That is one of the, again, fundamental pillars of being able to give constructive feedback and receive constructive feedback. I don't care if you have all the degrees in the world, if you're the greatest coach in the world, if you don't have a good relationship with that person and they don't feel safe with you or they don't feel comfortable with you, it's going to be very difficult for them to ask for feedback and for you to give feedback to them. And so that's one of the first and foremost things that's very important to understand. Another reason that people block feedback is obviously, number one, they have the fixed mindset and lack of humility. It's just that lack of humility, that high competitiveness, that people generally believe that if I am asking for help, that means I am weak. That means I can't figure this out myself. And the reality is there are people out there who truly believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Now we can go back to that's how they were raised. We can go back to, maybe that's just how they're wired. But people fundamentally believe that. Now, as a coach or as a mental performance coach or as a therapist, we need to understand that some people, that's their belief. So instead of getting frustrated with somebody and say, oh man, they have such a strong ego, they're selfish, they lack humility, they have fixed mindset, we need to understand that, wait a minute, maybe it is their upbringing. Maybe this is how what they have seen growing. Maybe their dad or their mom was like this. And another thing is, maybe it's their current state. I think a lot of times people try to give feedback to other people with the intention to help, with the intention to make them better, but they just picked the wrong timing, just bad timing. And the person they're giving feedback to is just in the wrong state. They're either hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Right.
And that great feedback just fell on deaf ears because the timing wasn't right. So I believe there are a number of different factors that contribute to that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And we talked about this on the last show as well, that one of the best ways to get over this and move more into a state of a growth mindset is simply to become more aware of where you're being fixed minded, right? The extent, I love this quote. Adi told me this. The extent to which a problem persists, the extent to which we are unconscious of a problem is the extent to which it persists. So simply by becoming more conscious of this problem, it starts to dissipate, and we start to have a little more control over what kind of thoughts we latch onto and believe.
That is so true. You cannot change what you're not aware of. And I really believe that firmly, that sometimes there are people who are not even aware, not even willing to stop and pause and notice the character flaws they may have, or it could be even not even character flaws, maybe something in their performance, and they're choosing not to see it because they haven't stopped. Their mind is running on just autopilot, and they haven't stopped to notice and be aware of it. And I love that quote. That's an outstanding quote. Essentially you cannot change what you are not aware of.
Right. Yeah. And then on the flip side is, the part of it is we don't stop to even try to be aware of certain things, but then there are things that we kind of have an idea of, and we're just afraid of really looking it in the face. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that all the time. A lot of times, for example, in professional sports, these guys dominated Little League, obviously, and then they get into high school and dominate in high school. And then you get to college, and the ones who make it to the highest level essentially dominate in college. And then they get to the professional level, and they've never experienced failure. They've done something a certain way, and they've always been the best in class and at every single level. And then once they get to the highest level, surrounded by the greatest athletes in the world, they end up struggling to change because they think, why would I change this when this thing is the very thing that got me here?
Right.
And so helping them understand that the things that you did to get you here might not be the things that you need to do to keep you here. Mm-hmm. And that is a very difficult paradigm shift for them to realize and say, whoa, I need to change my approach. That those things that made me successful in the past might not be the things that will make me successful from here on out, because the competition has changed, the stage has changed, the ability of my opponent has changed. And once the sooner they're able to understand that, is the sooner they're able to make the changes necessary to achieve that success that they're looking for.
That makes so much sense. That kind of explains why we see some people that, again, have been so dominant at the college level, and then they just don't pan out in the pros. While on the other side, they're kind of some no-name people from some smaller colleges, smaller schools come in and become some of the best in the sport.
Yeah, so true. And it comes down to how well can you adjust? Mm-hmm. How well can you adjust? And kind of in addition to that, a little caveat to that is these athletes who are really good, as they're the best of the best going through the ranks, once they get to the big leagues or once they get to the NFL and then they get punched in the face, it's like, oh, whoa, they haven't strengthened their relationship with failure before. They don't know what it's like. I've literally had athletes look at me and say, Justin, I have never failed before. Right. I don't know what it's like. This is weird to me. And they have to learn how to do that at the professional level, which is very difficult because they're on the big stage now. Mm-hmm. Now it's not, they don't fail in the back fields of Idaho or Montana or wherever. Now, when they fail, it's on SportsCenter or it's on social media. And that is, it becomes very difficult. So you have that combination of not having a strong relationship with failure and learning how to learn from it, combined with not wanting to change what they've done because they've been successful in the past doing it. And so it's just that interesting between a rock and a hard place. But until they're able to learn and say, okay, you know what? All right, I'm ready to make these adjustments and change. That's where you really see a move and make those strides of improvement.
So lastly, there is the unknown area. And this is what I don't know about me and you don't know about me. And so there are a couple ways of, a few ways of shrinking this area and improving the open area. One is others' observations. Then there is shared discovery and self-discovery. Shared discovery are things like therapy, a deep conversation with a friend, or a sports psychologist, for instance.
Yeah.
Why is this so useful? And do you have maybe any conversation starters that people can use with people close to them or a mentor to go down kind of a discovery path?
I love it. A great question, by the way. And I think this right here is the essence of what a great coach does. And I'm not saying psychologist, I'm not saying therapist, I'm saying coach. because the great majority of the people listening to this are not psychologists. And so you can be such a help to somebody. What I tell people, and they say, hey, what do you do? I say the three big things that I do in particular: I notice, I ask questions, and I suggest. I don't tell people what to do. I don't tell them how to feel. I just say, hey, here are some suggestions. Here's some, because a lot of times they don't know exactly, okay, where do I go with this information? Hey, here are some things, some possibilities. But number one is noticing or observing. And I think some of the big questions, if you're a coach or a parent or a friend of someone who they really want to change, but they lack some self-awareness, and you don't want to come out and straight tell them because you don't know how they're going to take it. But one way is to help them discover it themselves. And a very broad, great question I love to ask is, if you know they're struggling, is as simple as, what's going on? And if you have a really good relationship with them, they're going to take that wherever they want to take it. What's going on? And so that's a powerful one as well. Or tell me about. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Tell me, how did this go with you? How do you think it went with you? What did you notice? What did you notice about yourself? Another one I love is, how are you different? Hey, you, for example, season's over for the Red Sox, minor league, major leagues. I would go to a player right now and say, hey, tell me from when you got to spring training, February 7th, 2017 until now, how are you different? What have you noticed? And some of the best questions that you can ask someone are the questions that help them go back to search memories.
Wow.
That search memories. And as you have them go back and think about memories and think about lessons, I think it's really powerful. This is what I do with my children. Every single night when they go to sleep, there are 3 questions I ask them, and I'll explain the science behind it. So question number 1 I always ask is, what was the best part of the day? What was the best part of the day? What I'm eliciting right there is for them to search their memory for optimism, good moments. I want them to practice strengthening their optimistic muscles. We have something called a negativity bias, and it's so easy to look for the negative things, but I'm trying to help my kids train their brain to look for the positive things. What was the best part about today? Question number 2 I always ask them is, what was something you learned today? And not only do I just do it with athletes or my kids, I do it with the athletes as well. What is something you learned today? Now, I'm very deliberate with what did you learn today? It could be something they learned from doing well. It could be something learned from observing somebody else. It could be something they learned from failure. And I'm labeling as they're speaking. And I learned that when you turn your homework in late, you have consequences. Oh, okay, they learned from a failure. One time, my son goes, "Hey, I learned that when you don't listen to mom, you have to do chores." And my son didn't learn it. He noticed that that's what happened to his sister. So he learned from observing. And so I did that on purpose. And so what that question does, it helps them be open to learn, scan their environment for lessons, just really trying to help them strengthen that growth mindset. In addition to the last one, which is, what are you going to do better tomorrow? And what I want to strengthen is that autonomy muscle, that muscle that instead of being an object to be acted on, what are you going to do? What are you going to do better tomorrow? How are you going to get better by 1%? And I think those are 3 great questions to ask someone, because I truly believe that questions drive focus. And some of the best coaches, some of the best helpers, therapists, psychologists, what you name it, friends, are really good at asking really good questions and helping. And here's another thing, kind of a little tidbit of asking questions. Instead of asking why, ask what questions. So for example, let's say somebody is frustrated with their significant other, and they're like, oh man, and oh, she did this or he did this. What we do as friends is, man, why would they do that? Well, why would they? Why do you think they said that? And what we end up doing is we end up conjuring up this evidence and we're just putting fuel on the fire. Oh, this is probably why they did that. This is why they did, just getting our emotions going more and more, instead of, well, what about that frustrates you? Well, what about this? So what about what she said or he said angers you? Well, and if they give that answer, what is it about that? Is there anything about, and what you're doing is you're helping them activate more of the solution base instead of like the anger part of the brain, the amygdala. You have them activate the prefrontal cortex, and so obviously it's a little bit more deeper than some people like to get. But strengthening your ability to ask questions. Now, here's one more tip for those of you who I'm passionate about this topic. Be very careful with how you respond. What happens to a lot of people is there was one time when I was young in the field, a guy comes up to me and he's telling me his frustrations. And as I'm listening to him, I said, wow, this is my opportunity. I heard red flags all over the place. And before he could finish his sentences, I'm pulling out of my back pocket some tools and techniques and strategies without just letting him go. And I was correcting him. Hey, you shouldn't feel like that. Hey, you know what? Well, look at the bright side of this. And it took him a long time to talk before he was able to talk to me again. Because what ended up happening is he just wanted a safe space to vent. Mm-hmm. He just wanted someone to listen and not with all the answers to pull out of his back pocket. He just wanted to just let it fly because everyone had answers for him. Everyone was telling him how to correct his mindset or his doubts. And all he wanted me to do was listen. And I've had to learn that a few times, not even with athletes, but even with my wife, where she's like, I don't need you to save me. I don't need just listen to me. And I remember one time she was sharing something and I'm looking at him like, do you want me to give you an answer? Do you want me to share something? She's like, no, thank you so much. I feel so much better. And I didn't even say anything. And I think that sometimes as helpers or coaches or therapists or mental coaches, we think we need to have the answer. And sometimes no, all you need to do is ask the right questions and just get out of the way.
Right. We just want to feel understood.
Right. And we want to feel that the way I'm feeling is okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be frustrated. And I think the great coaches, the great friends, they're able to sit in the suck with these people. They're able to say, you know what, I'm willing to sit here and suffer with you. This silence doesn't bother me. This awkwardness doesn't bother me. Your anger and frustration, you crying right here in front of me, I'm still here. It doesn't bother me. You can share whatever you want to share, and I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to judge you, but go and be who you want to be. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm just going to be here for you. And I think if you can do that, you're going to help them shrink the hidden area. You're going to help them shrink their blindness area. You're going to help them shrink the unknown area because you're going to be able to notice and give some observation of what you've noticed. And it's powerful.
So the last way that we can improve or shrink that unknown area is through self-discovery. Last time we talked about a few different ways of self-discovery, including mindfulness, and you gave a ton of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. So first off, let's go even deeper into mindfulness. What is the goal of mindfulness in general, or just even being present?
Yeah, the great thing about mindfulness is you just said it. It's the practice of being present, the practice of being right here, right now. What we have is this monkey mind. Our thoughts are going all over the place, and we can get swept away in this constant chatter that's in our mind. And what I've seen, you as I told you before we started this conversation, you turned me on to CrossFit. And while I have learned about myself doing this, because as I'm in the middle of a Metcon, as I'm in the middle of something, my mind is going, oh, you can't do this. How are you going to finish this? This is so heavy. Yeah. And to notice that and say, wow, it's amazing where my mind goes. And there've been moments where I give into it and think, man, okay. And then it's over. I'm like, man, I could have went further. Now, as you practice mindfulness, I'm able to look at it and say, wow, okay, there's that thought. There it is. Let me anchor myself in my breath, or let me anchor myself in my feet touching on the ground. Basically, what mindfulness is, it's helping you anchor yourself to the present moment. And the most powerful, the most simple, really, anchor is your breath, because it's always with you. Mm-hmm. It's right here, right now. And it's not a relaxation strategy necessarily, although you may be relaxed doing it. It's not a visualization technique. It's simply being aware of right here, right now. Now, what's interesting about it is that's it. that's really all it is. And once your mind starts to wander, it's notice it and just begin again. Gently bring it back to the present. And you bring it back to your breathing. And then your mind goes, it's noticing it and then bringing it back. And people think, wait, but what else is there? It's like, no, that is literally it. That is it. And I have really been discovering this and learning more about this. And I went to a mindfulness coach a couple of weeks ago, really delving into understanding this deeply, because it is just reading the science and the research behind it. It is so beneficial.
So what is it? Let's see. How do I want to ask this? So basically what we're doing is we're just getting our head out of the way so that our bodies can do what they're already trained to do, correct?
Absolutely. There's a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. Tim Galloway writes about self one and self two. And self one is basically that mental chatter, that always judging yourself, always telling you what to do. And self two is the body. It's the body who says, you know what, like, when you just get out of the way, the body will do it. But it has all this self one judging it and telling what to do and how to be and what to think. Self two is like, no, just get out of the way. And one of the best ways to quiet self one is to give it something to chew on. You just give it something to chew on. And the way what you want to give it to chew on is your breath. Hey, just focus on the breathing, And then the body will go and take care of everything else on the back end without that judgmental monkey chatter and thoughts that's going a million miles an hour in your mind. And that's essentially the crux of mindfulness, is just quieting that mind and getting out of the way. And another part of mindfulness as well, I must say, is being okay with negative thoughts, is not knowing that you are not what you think necessarily. Right. Just because you have negative thoughts, it doesn't mean you have to believe them. Yep. I had a player once who came up to me and we're standing in the middle of the field and it's pouring rain on us. It's raining, and he's telling me how these negative thoughts are getting him and they're beating up on him, and he has no confidence and he's doubting himself and it's affecting how he plays. And I gave him the analogy of a storm. I said, look at where we are right now, and it's just pouring. We're getting wet, and that's hyperbole. It's raining, but it's not pouring. We're still out there. It's not like you're like, what are you doing out there in the rain? Get indoors. And so we're out there, and I said, here we are out here getting wet. He goes, yeah. I said, well, what do you need to stay dry right now? And he goes, an umbrella. I said, okay, let's say you got your umbrella and you put your umbrella up. What's that going to do for you? He goes, it's going to keep me dry. I said, yeah, but it's not stopping the rain. He goes, yeah, there's nothing to do about the rain, but this umbrella is going to keep me dry. And I said, well, in about 30, 40 minutes, what's going to happen to the storm? He goes, it's going to be gone, and I won't need my umbrella anymore. I'm going to be dry. And I said, the thoughts are the exact same way. What happens is when this storm comes through, this storm of thoughts and negativity and doubt, instead of getting mad at yourself and say, man, stop these thoughts, I got to stop these thoughts, just know that, hey, there they are. They're coming through. All you need to do is to put up the umbrella. And basically what his umbrella is his breath. It's the present. It's focusing on right here, right now, and knowing that even if the storm's coming through, you can still perform at a high level. You can still go out there. And I compared it to kind of a physical ailment. I asked him, how many times have you played hurt? Not injured, but hurt. He's like, every day. You always play hurt. Your body never feels perfect when you go out there. Mm-hmm. And I said, what percentage? He goes, about 90% of the time, my body's not perfect. I said, that's how the mind is as well. Just because you have some doubt, just because you have some mental fatigue or some anxiety, you can still go out there and be successful. And for that player at that moment, that was exactly what he needed to hear. He ended up realizing, wow, the storms are going to come through. I just need to pull out my umbrella, have a plan for it, because he didn't have a plan. He just sat there and soaked in his negativity and his doubts. His umbrella was focusing on his breathing and saying, hey, you know what? The sun's going to shine pretty soon. I'm okay. And lo and behold, now that he stopped fighting the storm in his mind, it just kind of flew by a lot quicker, and he was able to just get back to where he was. And so I think a part of mindfulness is understanding that you are not your thoughts. And as they come, you can notice them. And the more you notice them, say, hey, there you are. You name it to tame it. Hey, there's a thought of anxiety. There's a thought of anger. There's a thought of sadness. Once you notice it, you name it, And all of a sudden you're going to see it's just going to melt away a lot faster.
Dude, these are knowledge atom bombs. I'm loving the analogies, man. That's good shit. Bro. Not only so to take the injury one, for instance, or even like say a sickness, not only can you go out there and do well, you can actually do your very best. The example that comes to mind is Jordan winning one of the championship games while he had allegedly he had the flu. Right. It didn't hold him back from having one of the best games of his entire life.
100%. That was the exact analogy I used actually with this player, and his eyes lit up. He's like, you are absolutely right. And here we are talking about the physical side. I said, this is just same thing, same principle, but for the mind. You're going to have these feelings, and you can still, like you said, Mike, you still not just survive, but thrive. Mm-hmm. And so many times players will tell me, hey, I had a great game, and man, I didn't have my A game. I didn't have my A game. I didn't feel 100% successful or confident going into the game. I felt a little nervousness, but hey, that's life, and that's going to happen. And once they learn that, powerful.
And that's the difference between the best of the best and all the rest, right? They do it despite whatever's going on inside of them, whether it be physical or mental. They show up.
They show up. They don't take counsel from their feelings. It's and I just literally today, I walked into my box. And this guy comes up to me, he goes, hey, I hear you're a motivational speaker. I said, well, that's motivation is part of it. But then you can have a highly motivated person who lacks focus. You have a person with high motivation who lacks confidence. And so it's part of it. But interestingly enough, with elite performers, we never talk about motivation because these guys are already driven. Yeah. And going along with what you said, you hear it all the time. It's like, man, I don't feel like going to work out, but I work out because that's what professionals do. Man, my body hurts. I don't feel like eating healthy and eating right or going and playing right now. But you know what? My why is to win a championship. I'm going to go out there and do it. And so they're very good at doing what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And they don't take counsel from their feelings like the average person.
So as people are becoming more aware of their thoughts and emotions, what do they do with them once they're aware? And specifically, I'm talking about this concept of positive self-talk, right? When we talk about mental performance, you always hear something about positive self-talk. So how do you do that and practice it?
Yeah. One thing about positive self-talk, just right off the bat, is I think some people are really honestly shy away from it now because they think it's so fluffy. They think it's so slap a smile on your face and just think about sunshine and rainbows. And you've got to, and I've learned myself to really share exactly and understand what do we mean when we say positive self-talk or positive thoughts. There was one time I was speaking to a group of platoon sergeants with the Army, a huge group of them. And I was talking about having positive, being optimistic, and a glass half full. I think I gave that analogy. And one of the platoon sergeants raised his hand, and he goes, I completely disagree with you. He goes, I'm sick and tired of hearing about all this positivity, and you got to look at the bright side. He goes, this is the military. He goes, we need to be more pessimistic. We need to be more realistic. And I said, I let him go, and you saw a lot of head nods, like, yeah, that's right. This is the Army. And I remember asking him, I said, well, tell me, what do you mean by being pessimistic? I wanted to make sure that we were both speaking about the same thing. And he goes, pessimistic, glass is half empty. He goes, that's the kind of mindset that we need to have because it helps us prepare at the highest level possible. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And I said, okay. I said, no offense, but I completely disagree with you. And you could have just heard a pin drop, like, what? You civilian or disagreeing with me? And I said, well, a tried and true pessimist is categorized by this. Not only is the glass half empty, but it is always going to be empty and there's nothing you can do about it. I said, is that what you're saying? And he's like, no, that's not what we're saying. I said, okay, good. Let's make sure we're on the same page. For me, positive thinking or being an optimist is number one, being able to stare at the brutal facts and to be honest with your circumstance. If you are not good at something, that's why this self-awareness is so important, is to be able to say, hey, you know what? This is the reality of my situation. No matter how bleak or how bad or how dirty and just how much of a mess it is, this is what it is. Being realistic about that, but then being optimistic about the path or what we're going to do to be able to overcome that thing. And so for me, positive thoughts and positive thinking, it starts number one with awareness. That's why I think you and I really jive together in that, because that's where it all starts.
Right.
And number one, understand, okay, what are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? Where are my vulnerabilities? And then being able to say, okay, now what am I going to do about it? I think the problem with confidence, sometimes people think, oh, I just got to be confident. I believe it's misplaced. I believe people who struggle, they misplace their confidence in skills and tactics and how they feel. And that can hurt them when they can hurt them in a moment that they're not expecting it. For example, let's say I'm an athlete who I have, say a pitcher, for example, let's just a baseball pitcher. A great pitcher has about 3 to 4 pitches. And let's say he has confidence in his curveball, all the confidence in the world in his curveball. And he shows up one day and lo and behold, he doesn't have the curveball. It's just not there. Right. And he had all his eggs in the basket. This is what gives me confidence, my curveball. Now what? Confidence gone, struggling. Now what we teach that guy to say, you know what? Instead of having confidence in your curveball, which is great, I'm not saying not to have it, but also to have confidence in your ability to compete despite having your curveball. I think the most important confidence you need to have, and we're positive thoughts, is that I can compete and be successful no matter how I feel and in any circumstance. If you have that kind of confidence, that's ultimately where it's at, knowing that you can thrive on your B, C, D, and F game, C, and I'm missing C, your C game. Yep. And so positive self-talk to me is this notion of not listening to yourself, but to start talking to yourself. And I think people are really good at allowing this negative self-talk, this chatter to infiltrate, and they believe it. That's where I think mindfulness comes in so well, because to pump the brakes and to notice, oh, I am having these thoughts. They are eating at me. Okay, let me notice it. Okay, there it is. And you can either replace it and change your thought, focus on what you're going to do about it, or some people just say, you know what? Just noticing it is enough. Hey, I'm just having that thought. Hey, just go out there and have some fun. And so I think it's different for every person. Positive thoughts look different for everybody.
So just to wrap up about this self-awareness piece, last time, like I said, you gave a ton of questions that people can ask themselves, such as, ways to find your purpose, whether or not you have a growth mindset, etc. What are 3 to 5 of the most important questions that athletes can ask themselves to discover more about themselves?
I think one of the most important things right off the bat is to understand person over athlete. When I sit down with people, it's all about person over athlete. How are you as a man or a woman, as a father, as a wife, as a husband, I think that's huge, because it is all one. It's all one thing. But I think one of the most important questions I always ask is what does the best version of yourself look like? And that is a question that is so open, and they've never been asked that before, and they think, and I really let them think about it. I'll tell them, hey, think about it for a couple of days. What does the best version of you look like? Because a lot of times when people aren't performing on the field or in the court or in the gym, a lot of times it has to do with stuff that is happening off the field, off the court, outside of the gym, relationships, things that they hold near and dear to them. So what does the best version of you look like? Another question I love to ask are, what are your go-to behaviors when you are at the best? So we kind of dissect that first question a little bit more. When you're at your best, what are these behaviors that just give you life? Mm-hmm. Is it waking up at a certain time? Is it eating a certain way? Is it reading books? Is it what are your go-tos? What makes you happy? Like these behaviors you do, when you do it, it just fills your tank. And the next one is, who are your go-to people? Who are these fountains in your life? These people who infuse optimism, they infuse energy, they infuse love into your life, they fill you up. as opposed to drains, these people who just drain you and they suck the life out of you. They suck your dreams out of you. They suck the positivity. They're just so negative. And what ends up happening a lot of times to people is when they're in a little bit of a slump or things aren't going really well, you ask them, they end up doing some self-discovery and realize, wow, I got away from my go-to behaviors. I got away from my go-to people, and I got away from my purpose, why I do what I do. Because sometimes people are trying to stuff people's throat down with, oh, you need to focus on winning, or you need to focus on this. And we follow what it says on social media, but it's really important to find out, which goes with my last question is, like you already mentioned it, is focusing on why you do what you do. I think that's so powerful, because when you know why you do what you do, you'll have more power to do what you do. And I think that's something that we always got to keep asking ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So you're basically one, you're setting a vision for what the best version of you looks like, and then you're saying this is what my baseline is. This is where I'm best, right? When I'm doing X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. That's it.
Love it.
Because I'm sorry, just to reiterate, because a lot of times what we're doing, I love to do is a reverse engineer success. Mm-hmm. If people are struggling, we always go back to searching their memories. Okay, when you're at your best, what were you doing? And we really try to dissect it. We really try to understand it. And that's those are some questions that will really help you. I just wanted to mention that we're all about reverse engineering success. Mm-hmm. And that's just helping them understand what makes them tick, what helps them. Because sometimes what people will do is we always say, hey, what did you learn from your failures? What did you learn from your failures? And I'm all for that. But what we don't ask a lot is, what did you learn from your successes? Oh, you had a great day. What did you do today? A lot of times we'll be like, oh, we celebrate it. Oh, I had a great day. I did this, and we just move on. But when we fail, it's like, okay, let's understand why we failed. What these questions are doing is, okay, let's understand why we were successful. What did we do right? And I think that's a powerful lens to look at our lives.
It's so ironic that we're talking about this right now. I literally have a sticky note on my desk right now that I wrote a few days ago, because I'm literally in one of the happiest states I've ever been in. And on this sticky note, it says, write out why I'm so happy, and then share it with a D so that she can hold me accountable to continue doing the things that I'm doing. Wow. So it's funny that we're talking about this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Great place to be. So I want to talk about some of your elite athletes now and see what we can learn from them. So you work with the absolute tip of the spear, and it's in the last show, we talked about some of the ways that they are different than kind of the regular population. I think it might be useful to hear, what are some of the ways that they're similar to the regular population?
They're human. They care about what people think. They love their families. They have fears and insecurities. They doubt themselves so much, just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. They wonder. A lot of times, imposter syndrome will hit them as well. You have people who are all-stars, future Hall of Famers, say, just admit, hey, what if someone finds me out? What if someone finds out that I'm a fake? What if I'm not? People find out that I'm not as good as they think I am. These are literal concerns and actual phrases that people state and they say. And it's from all different sports, from all different walks of life. And that's something that I've really learned and realized that, wow, we're all human and no one is a superhero, and everyone has insecurities and vulnerabilities, and everyone's, everyone's a mess. We're all our own mess, and we're completely okay with it and trying to learn how to get better. And that's something that I've learned about high level athletes.
I think that's so empowering, because I can attest to this myself. Sometimes I look at the best of the best and think, oh, they're full of so much confidence. Like I could just never do that, or they just never doubt themselves. But the more I get to talk to these people, I understand that they experience the same things as the rest of us. And it's really empowering to, shoot for your very best when you don't think you're held back by any kinds of beliefs.
That is so true. And just in all full disclosure, in terms of vulnerability, that happened to me about 2 months ago. I'm eating dinner with my wife and kids. I'm sitting there and I'm quiet, and my wife goes, "What's wrong?" And I told her, I said, I don't feel like I'm really good at my job. Like, what, I don't feel like I even do anything. What if I feel like a fake? I feel like people are going to find me out. And it was so neat. And my wife was so good at why do you think you feel that way? And she knows. She's like, "Oh no, you're the best." She within a pep talk, I was like, interesting. And she just naturally started asking, "Oh, where do you think this came from? Well, how long have you been feeling like this?" And it was really cool to experience it. And there were really deep, I could say, dark feelings. I'm like questioning my path, questioning my ability, questioning just my skill set, and it happens. And then lo and behold, it goes away, and then we're back to going. And it was a neat lesson for me because it happens to all of us.
Wow. What are one or two things that elite athletes do that if other people would adopt, do you think would lead to some of the biggest performance improvements?
I think one of the things that is repeated over and over again, I think this kind of umbrella, is this notion that I'm a professional. They are professional athletes, and they do what pros do. And you'll hear it. "Oh man, why are you going to work?" "I'm going to work. I'm eating healthy because I'm a pro. I'm a professional." Or "I'm going to." And we talked about this. They don't take counsel from their feelings. They're willing to do things despite how they feel. And so many times people think, "Oh, they're always motivated to go to work. They're always motivated to go work out, to eat healthy." No. The reality is no. But to be a professional, that's what professionals do. And that's what that has become their identity. Another thing that they're so good at is anchored in their why. They want to win a championship. These guys are highly competitive, and they just want to win. Some want to win because they love winning. Some want to win because they hate losing, and they have different things that drive them, and they're just committed to their purpose, and they think about it all the time. And I think if we constantly have our why and our purpose in the forefront of our thoughts, and are constantly identifying what it takes to be successful, and then do them regardless of how we feel, we are going to see success in whatever aspects of our life we're striving to be successful in. And there's this author named Steven Pressfield. He wrote this book called Turning Pro. And in his book, he talks about turning pro. He was talking about being a creative, an author, he was talking about being a writer. And at what point do you become a professional writer? And he says he just decided, I'm a pro. This is what I do. I'm a pro. And he wasn't even a pro at the time, but he decided to do what pros do. And it was a simple little mind paradigm shift, a mental shift. And lo and behold, he goes out and he just starts writing these amazing New York Times bestseller, because he made this decision that I'm a pro. I'm not an amateur anymore. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a pro and approach my work as a pro. And I think that right there is something that elite performers, they're very mindful of that. We're professional. This is what we do.
Yeah. And for Steven Pressfield, I think one of the insights he had was that he didn't need to feel inspired to sit down and start writing. He would just sit down and start no matter how he felt.
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld has a great story where he decided, I don't know how many in a row, but he just, hey, just write a joke a day. Just write a joke a day. It doesn't matter how you feel. And for those who are listening to this, what I always tell people is it's all about momentum. Create momentum by trying to pick one small little thing you can do to get 1% better every day. Get a calendar, a blank calendar, and just start every time you do it, put that X there. Okay, you accomplished it for the day. And then once you start stringing together day after day of those little baby steps, man, momentum comes, and there's the results, the compound results of doing things every day. Man, it's amazing what happens as you look back.
So these elite athletes are just incredibly driven, and they have this sense of purpose, so much so that other than their family, for most of them, like their sport is the most important thing in their life. And for a lot of people, I think they pretend that they have this same level of purpose, but when it comes down to it, they'd rather have a social life or other hobbies or even go on vacations over training and, building their craft, which I think is completely okay. What would you say to someone that is either struggling with this or maybe they don't even know they're struggling with this yet?
Yeah, for me, your actions will reveal how bad you really want something.
Mm-hmm.
It just really comes down to your actions will reveal how bad you want it. And I loved what you said. It's okay. It's okay. I think we beat up on ourselves. There's so many people who might be listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to be an elite CrossFit athlete, or I want to take this to the next level. And they go to bed at night and they're good for a couple of days, and then they go to bed and like, oh man, I struggled again. And what I love about that is, number one, that's human. It happens to a lot of people. And number two is every single day you have the opportunity to begin again. That's it. You just have the opportunity, 86,400 seconds in a day. You can, every day you wake up, you can carry the baggage from yesterday, and it doesn't matter how far you are behind or how far off track you fell, you can begin right now. And to really take something small, I think people become overwhelmed and they want this, I call it microwave success. They're looking on social media and they're seeing all these people making gains. They're seeing all these people really successful and they want it right now. I think it's just a mindset shift to say, you know what, it's a marathon and I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to focus on my daily actions, on what it takes to be successful, and know yourself. Some people, it's just going to take something small. If you can't afford, the time doesn't allow you to go to the gym as long as you want to go, just do something small. And little by little, I always say little by little becomes a lot, and allow yourself to grow and allow the function of your dreams and your craft to grow with you. Because people just beat up on themselves. They'll go hard for a little bit, they'll sprint, and then they get exhausted, and then they fall off the path, and then they beat up on themselves, and then they give up completely. Then they say, you know what, I'm going to get back on, I'm going to do it again. For me, what I say with these people is say, okay, what is the smallest thing you can do? Let's just do that every single day. And going back to what I said earlier, once the momentum comes, it just becomes organic. All of a sudden, you start changing, you start eating better. We call them keystone habits. Mm-hmm. What I would do, and then this is a keystone habit, is identify if there's somebody out there who's listening to this and thinking they want to turn pro. I have my air quotations up, or they want to be elite in something. I would say identify one keystone habit. What is one thing that you can consistently do every single day, that if you do this thing, it will knock down other dominoes. And as you do that thing, you're just going to start building momentum. Amazing things happen. Can I share a quick little story about that?
Of course.
Is that cool? Okay. So I don't know if I shared this in the last one, but if I did, so I'm working with someone and she gained a lot of weight when she gave birth to a child. And she's trying to eat healthy and she's trying to go to the gym and she's going and she has this number that she wants to get to. Let's just say her elite weight level, that she has a number, and she's going and she ends up struggling. The more she goes to the gym, the more weight she's gaining, and it has become a chore. And when she describes it, she's like, Justin, I have to go to the gym. I have to eat my vegetables. I have to drink more water. And you just hear it in her voice. It's a chore. And she's just stressed out on trying to achieve this, in her mind, is elite status of fitness. And what ends up happening is we said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to change the way you define success. And we grabbed a blank calendar and we said, you know what, let's start. Oh, I told her, how much control do you have over your weight? And she goes, oh, I have 100% control. I was like, well, if you had 100% control, then why have you not controlled it to go down? And that was earth shattering to her. She's like, oh, I guess I can't control that. So here she is beating up on herself over controlling her weight when she really does not have control over it. The things that you try to control but can't end up controlling you. She was being controlled. And so I thought, you know what, let's do this. Here's a blank calendar. Let's just start marking all the times you go to the gym. But what do I do at the gym? Doesn't matter. Just get there. But how long do you want me there? I don't care. Just get to the gym every single day. You'll figure it out. And so lo and behold, and I told her, never stop stepping on the scale. Just don't step on the scale. And because that was creating a lot of negativity and anxiety for her. So Threw out all the scales. She had like 4 in the house, threw them all out. And lo and behold, she started stringing up day after day. Days led to weeks, which led to months, which led to years. She went 5 years without stepping on the scale. And the doctor, after 5 years, slipped up because she'd go to the doctors and she'd tell him, please don't tell me how much I weigh. And lo and behold, he spit it out. And she's like, oh man, he told me. But she was so amazed because she ended up hitting her goal that she originally said was better than she thought, and she's in the best fitness level of her life. She was an instructor now. She started doing marathons. She started to do triathlons, and all those goals ended up happening as a result of a keystone habit, which was just get to the gym every day. Wow. And that's what I would say to somebody. Hey, find that keystone habit, stick with it, and all of a sudden you'll see organic habits start to develop.
You just laid out the next topic of the topic of our next podcast. I love what you said. When we try to control things that are out of our control, they end up controlling us. I've never heard it that way.
Oh, yeah. I love that principle.
So I have a couple more before we close it out. What's one thing that you've changed your mind about in regards to your work in the past year or two?
I think I've changed the fact that I have to be profound, that I have to say something that's going to change someone's life. And I have learned that I don't have to do that. They have the answers, and I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to give them a principle. I don't have to give them a strategy. I don't have to give them a technique. And one of the most powerful ways I learned that was there's a player who was having a very, very bad month, to the point to where the game was over and he's sitting in the dugout and he was in tears, just absolutely in tears, just struggling. This is a minor leaguer, not a major league, a minor leaguer. And I'm sitting next to him. The crowd is leaving, everyone's gone, and he's just sitting there. And I'm literally sitting, our legs are touching each other, just sitting side by side. I'm sitting there, I'm not saying a word. And he sat there and he just got it all out for about 10 to 15 minutes, just not saying a word, just crying and just sitting there. And then he stands up and he looks at me, he gives me a big hug. He's like, thank you so much. That's all I needed. And then he walked out. I'm like, wow, I did nothing. I was just there. I showed him, you know what? I'm able to suffer with you and to sit here and embrace this sit in your suffering, and I'm comfortable with it. And it just dawned on me. I don't need to be profound. I just need to develop a good relationship, and being there a lot of times is all they need.
That's such a cool and humble insight. I like that a lot. All right. Is there any burning desires, anything you want to share with the listeners before we shut it down?
No, you know what? I think that's it. I thank you very much for asking such great questions. I think and I told you this at the first podcast, questions drive focus. And I think you're one of the best I've been around who ask such great questions, because I've shared things. You had me think of things that I normally don't think about. And it's been neat. It's been a fun experience. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And thank you so much for your time. This is possibly even more valuable than the first one.
Oh, appreciate it, brother.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
All right. We'll see you.